sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
Nothing like heading into the holidays with some momentum for your true financial independence. That's what we're ready to deliver today on the Get Ready for the Future show. Welcome in. I'm John Shrewsbury, in for Scott Inman on this holiday weekend. With me today is Teresa Arago from our Conway. That's it. That's that town to the north. I almost said Hot Springs, but I was just in Hot Springs not too long ago, so I kind of had the folks over there on my mind.
I get it. I look a lot like Lexi, so I can see that.
I see.
For those of you that don't know, she doesn't look anything like me.
Not at all. We're here to try to limp through the holiday edition of the Get Ready for the Future show. And I can already feel, Teresa, the folks who went out on Black Friday or Cyber Saturday or whatever it is, Cyber Monday. Whatever it is. Anyway, I can feel the overspending going on right now.
Yes, you can. And I have to admit that the urge is there for me too. So if you're in that boat, with all of us, we hope that we can provide you some things to think about this week and prepare you for the holiday season. So we'll see.
Well, we've got questions and answers here at the Get Ready for the Future show. Let's jump right into our first question of the day. From James via email, what are your thoughts about the future of interest rates and how should this affect my investment strategy? Well, James, it really depends. And we say that a lot here on the Get Ready for the Future show because there is so much connected to your finances and so many variables are in play. But interest rates are something that we've all dealt with dramatic changes over the last, 3 or 4 years. We got so used to interest rates being almost next to nothing. And so we do say that it does depend a lot on your age. You could have no effect or it could have some effect.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think if you're younger, if you're, in that accumulator phase, then the interest rates aren't really going to bother you as much because if you're in growth mode, you're not in bonds, which are where interest rates have been affected. But if you are, in something that relies on debt, they may not have as much growth as they would have in past years. So if you're looking at that, you've got to dig a little bit deeper before you can really answer that question.
Yeah, I think that one of the primary objectives, if you are in growth mode, is to accumulate shares of great American companies, maybe inside a mutual fund or ETF or something of that nature. But buying equities is really where you need to be. And interest rates can have a negative effect on equities. We saw in 2022, the equity markets kind of slow down because interest rates accelerated so greatly. We don't see a big acceleration of interest rates on the horizon anywhere. There is no catalyst like we had with all of the government spending back in the early 2020s, but as a result of COVID. But there are things that if you are a fixed income investor, Teresa, I would think that you would want to be mindful about which direction interest rates are going.
Yes. I mean, if you already own those fixed instruments, so you've already got some bonds, then those prices will actually increase. Their value will increase as interest rates go down, which we're expecting them to continue doing, assuming everything continues on the current track. The opposite is true. If they were to go up at some point, it'll affect you again then. The other thing to think about if you're a bond investor or fixed instrument investor is paying attention to the time frames. If you want to stay in that market, it might be time to reach a little bit further out. But as we've seen, there's not as much benefit to you reaching further out. So it just depends on your goal there. But overall, like John mentioned earlier, if you are in that accumulation phase, your job is to buy as many shares as you can every single pay period or every single contribution. So the interest rates aren't as impactful, but really just staying the course with your plan certainly is.
There was a lot of conversation, and as a matter of fact, on the fastest 4 minutes in finance, I subbed for Scott on that on Friday, and I talked about tax cuts and things of that nature. And there's a lot that I think we've got to kind of begin to look at now. I said, campaigning is easy. and actually delivering and governing is hard. And so now Trump has got to deliver on some tax cut issues that he wants to talk about. But I think there also has to be some spending cuts, or we could see the interest rates go back up.
Yes, if we don't get this inflation under control, they may pop them back up a little bit to try to control that. And what they're trying to do is slow some of that growth. You know, if you think about these companies, they used to be able to get loans really cheap to be able to grow themselves, and we call it leverage, to help them put more into their business and not have to use their own dollars. But as those interest rates have risen, they don't have as much flexibility to do that and stay solvent. So it is slowing some of their capacity to innovate in the meantime.
I think the trick also is to not try to time the market. And I appreciate where James is coming from here. But again, I don't know that timing the market has ever worked out really well for anybody. I think you have to build your plan to anticipate whatever may be going on, whether it's a rise in interest rates, a fall in interest rates, a rise in the stock market, a fall in the stock market. We know all of those things are likely to happen at some point in time in the future. I think you have to have a well-diversified plan so you're not fully committed toward one way or the other.
Yes, and if your plan accounts for all of those different things, then you can just stay the course. You don't have to make knee-jerk reactions to whatever happens to be going in the market at the moment. So you've got a lot more kind of bandwidth to stick to the plan you already had if you've got a good portfolio and you've got a good plan already.
If you'd like to get a jump start on your plan for financial independence, you can simply reach out to us for the 7 steps to unlocking financial independence. It's a free download. You can go to getreadyforthefuture.com/steps to download the 7 steps to financial independence. All right, moving on now, we've got Renee from Fayetteville. She says, I am 56, husband is 62, and we have $3.2 million in retirement savings. Good job. Not to brag, but I feel like we're in a pretty good spot compared to most I've heard about. My question is, at this rate, would the 4% rule be an okay strategy for us? If not, what should we do? Renee, thank you very much for your question. If you're planning to retire now, you're going to have a pretty long retirement at their younger ages here. And I can say that because I'm older than both of them. But being 56 and 62, having $3.2 million is a really pretty cool thing. The question is, all right, first of all, how do you deal with this long-term retirement that I mentioned? You could live into your 90s. That is 3 decades. And so you have to think about that issue. You also have to think about the fact that you are in a situation of saying, I wondered about the 4% rule, but let's talk about how much income you actually need. I think that's the key thing that most people really do kind of gloss over when they're talking about retirement. They do all this math equations, but they don't do the simple math of looking at their required and desired income.
Yes, and if they're looking at just a percentage, it can be misleading too, because you know, when you think about those assets, all of us would agree over $3 million is a ton of money. However, if they need $10,000 a month to make their household work, then you're talking about a totally different mathematical equation. I think if you focus on the outcome you need, which is the income, then you have a better way of figuring out if those assets are sufficient. Another thing I noticed here is that she is 6 years younger. So in that case, Renee, there's a even better chance that you're going to have a period of time where you are a single person in retirement. So the question is, what happens when one of those Social Security checks goes away or whatever other resources you have? So it's important to think of it not just as one item, but to really see it in the big picture of your overall financial picture.
I think that one of the things that may be escaping Renee is the fact that the 4% rule does not provide for any guaranteed income. Now, we don't know whether Renee and her husband have a pension or not. We don't know whether how they will sequence Social Security, but likely Social Security is the only guaranteed income that they would have in retirement. And if that is not sufficient to meet their basic needs, then they're going to need to dedicate some of that $3.2 million towards some sort of way to produce guaranteed income to them to be sure that they get through the next 30 years of life with their fixed expenses taken care of by regular, dependable, predictable income. And I think that's the first step.
Yes, it takes a lot of pressure off of your other assets if you can take care of that piece first. If you can prioritize guaranteed income to cover those things that you know are coming anyway. You know, think back to 2020. Your light bill didn't go down just because you were stuck at home and possibly unemployed. You've got to make sure those things are covered no matter what's happening in the market. The other piece of this that I think is really important when you're getting to that level of wealth is, have you completed an estate plan? Especially if taxes change, as they may do here soon, the estate tax could change drastically. So if that happens and you've now accumulated over that minimum, you could have a huge tax bomb for your heirs if you're not careful.
Teresa, I think also there are expenses that people don't normally associate necessarily with retirement, but after they really start to dig into it and think about it, they do find out that there are these things that they need to take care of. One of them is long-term care expenses. If one or both of you have a need for some type of medical care that is not covered by Medicare or your Medicare supplement, it could be that you need long-term care coverage to offset that. Now you say, well, I've got $3.2 million. I've got a lot of cushion. Well, it depends on how much long-term care expenses you might have. So that's one issue in particular. I think the other issue is, what major expenditures are they likely to do over the next couple of decades? Could they want to buy a car? Do they want to take, a lot of travel or something of that nature that may not be within the budget? Those expenditures can have a pretty big impact on the survivability of your overall retirement income plan. And I think that's where sitting down with a financial advisor and trying to do some forward thinking on this is probably appropriate.
Yes, I think looking at your current expenses is a great place to start, but you need to understand what might not be in your radar at the moment, which is something that we have special training in, is helping people identify those additional things. You think about that 4% rule. Let's pretend you only had $1 million. I know, only, right? That's the goal a lot of people have. But let's say you had $1 million and we're in 2008. You're going to be in a situation where either you have to take a pretty substantial pay cut or you have to take an unreasonable amount out. So doing the math for you, in 2008, at one point, the market was down 40%. So you were taking $40,000 a year in income if you were taking the 4% rule as your way of doing this. But now that your portfolio is worth $600,000, you're either going to take $24,000 a year, a $16,000 discount, and cut and pay, or if you continue to take that 40, you've now taken over 7%, which is not sustainable. That's why having a strategy that is built to provide for your guaranteed income needs without worrying about the market is so impactful, in my opinion.
At GenWealth, it's called a flooring and bucketing strategy, or the ready to retire process. Basically, we provide for a significant level of guaranteed income to meet your basic living expenses. And then we do bucketing, or a time segmented strategy where we are laying out different dollars for different time segments in your retirement. If you take a look at the graphic, if you're watching the video portion of the Get Ready for the Future show, a couple of those buckets fall in the time frame of 1 to 10 years. That's where the most conservative money is. You're going to need that money fairly soon, so you don't need the vagaries of the market, the ups and downs of the market, to impact how much money you would have available. So we make those investments in very conservative investments. In the middle of the array of buckets, there is a moderate bucket where we are producing income in that bucket, but we're also giving some low-end growth to your portfolio as well. And then in the last couple of buckets are the growth buckets. Those are out 15 plus years. To tell you the truth, Teresa, the 15-year thing is almost magic, in that if you take a look at the history of the market, there's never been a 15-year period of time connected with the S&P 500 where you've had a negative return, meaning that if you just leave it alone, it's likely to have a positive return for you. The odds are all stacked in your favor if you do that, and that's why we segregate those equities to those long-term buckets.
And it was very helpful in 2020. Of course, I was not an advisor in 2008, so I didn't have to live through that trauma. But in 2020, when the market dipped so heavily in such a short period of time, the few clients that I did get calls from, I was able to reassure them, listen, your conservative bucket is okay. That's the one we're drawing from right now. We've got time for those others. But pretend you're in 2008 and you've got those later buckets. Well, there's the market since then. It's been right at 15 years. We're way ahead of where we were. You've had time to recover. Now, we can't guarantee market performance, of course. Our job is to mitigate it as best we can, and that's where this flooring and bucketing strategy can really be magical.
Renee's question is the question of the week, and we congratulate Renee because she has won herself a free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler for being the question of the week. You can participate and get yourself one too by simply emailing your question to us at show, S-H-O-W, at getreadyforthefuture.com. That's show at getreadyforthefuture.com. Again, congratulations to Renee for the question of the week. Speaking of questions, Jordan is in Little Rock and has a question. The question is, I know the election could lead to changes in tax policy. How might these changes affect my Social Security benefits, pension income, or withdrawals from retirement accounts? Should I be adjusting my tax planning or retirement withdrawal strategy? Well, I would say, Jordan, let's just wait and see. There is a lot of uncertainty out there, and even though President Trump won his election and the Republicans took the House and the Senate, politics is politics, and, getting some of the things done that Trump wants to do, that he campaigned on, is going to be probably more difficult than just making an edict and saying that it's done.
Let it be so. I think it never is when it comes to politics. It's anything but smooth sailing. There's going to be, more than just we need a certain number of votes. They still have to be able to keep their jobs. And so they're not going to just make typically overarching changes. So I think if you just pause for a minute, we can deal with each of these things separately. Just pause for a minute and understand that there are boundaries in place in our politics and in the government. So hopefully, things will be a little balanced by the end of it.
Let's take Social Security, for instance. Trump has said that he would like to not tax Social Security at all for seniors, and I'm sure seniors would love that. Here's the problem. The taxes that are paid on Social Security go right back into the Social Security system, and they are used to pay future benefits. Already we have a Social Security system that is designed at this particular point or is on track at this particular point to run out of its reserves in 2033 or 2034, depending on the year that you look at it. But Teresa, that's where this becomes a little bit more difficult. And when you also think about the fact that Social Security and military spending, and there's certainly a lot of fat in military spending, but those two things make up the preponderance of the budget. And there is a lot of stuff that can be cut without question. We've seen example after example, but cutting Social Security taxes could be cutting your nose off to spite your face.
Yes, we talked about earlier, if your portfolio dropped by 40%, your bills still exist. Our government still has bills that it's got to pay. So saying, we're just not going to take in this income flippantly is not a realistic expectation. Now, there are some things in place that could lead to cutting some of that fat. We've got Elon and Vivek are at the Department of Government Efficiency now. So it may be that they're able to find some ways to create some space in the budget. But just like your budget, you can't cut the income without cutting expenses too. So we're going to have to see what happens with that one.
She mentioned the pension income. It's unlikely that your pension income would be affected by anything tax-wise. I don't know that we're talking about reducing tax brackets or anything of that nature. There may be some of that go on, but I do think that the spending cuts have to come first, and let's see what leeway we have, because the budget deficit just keeps growing and growing. We've got to stem that tide first. So I wouldn't look for any big tax cuts per se, particularly in pension income or withdrawals from retirement accounts.
Now, on the flip side of that, though, if they don't sunset the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, then it may remain at, these lower levels that we're seeing right now. So there is a chance that could benefit you by it not changing, but I don't see it going lower based on what we're seeing yet.
Yeah, I think the removal of the sunset or the extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it was programmed to be expiring at the end of 2025, and that would revert back to 2017 when it was passed, and those rates were higher. Your standard deduction was lower. There were a lot of other things that would change as a result of all of that. And I think that's the big thing. It's let's just kind of keep things steady where they are. It would be the attitude of the Trump administration. And then let's nibble around the edges on the expenditures and see what we may be able to do as well. So I think but when Jordan brings this up, I think this is a real opportunity, though, to think about forward-looking tax planning. This is something that we engage in with our clients here at GenWealth. We try to look ahead ahead. You know, most of the time when you go to your CPA or you go to your tax provider, preparer rather, you're going in with a rear view mirror look at what has happened in the past year and then documenting that for the IRS. That is not tax planning. That is tax preparation, and that's paying your taxes in a lawful and legal way. Tax planning is actually looking ahead and trying to decide what lawful and legal ways do you want to reduce the amount of tax that you will pay into the future. Notice I said into the future and not next year. Some of the things that you would engage in forward-looking tax planning are designed to lower your tax bill way into the future when you retire. That is a huge benefit to most retirees if they can keep their taxes as low as possible. So this is a plug for forward-looking tax planning. If you're not getting that from your tax person, then you need to sit down with a GenWealth advisor. Let us walk through some strategies that can help you look ahead on that subject of tax planning. I know a lot of people are really always wanting to lower their taxes, but it's like everything else, Teresa. We're busy and we don't really take the time to do the hard work that is thinking about how the future might be better than the present.
Yes, and I think for a lot of people, it feels overwhelming. The weight of keeping track of things feels overwhelming, but there are tons of things that you can do to help yourself out for the future that don't require a lot of work on your part. I mean, there's apps that can help you track expenses and different things that you can do. But the other side of it too is what we want to encourage people is don't spend $1 to save 20 cents. There are a lot of times where people say, well, buy this, spend that to avoid taxes or avoid taxes altogether at all cost. But then they get to retirement and they don't have a Social Security check to help supplement their income. So everything there's an effect, to everything that you do, cause and effect. So make sure that your plans are perfect for what you need, not just kind of these cookie cutter recommendations.
If you've got questions, we've got answers. All you need to do is call or text them to us at 501-381-5228, 501-381-5228 to hear your question answered on the air here at the Get Ready for the Future show, or you can email us at show@getreadyforthefuture.com. Our next question comes from Alan from Greenbrier. I recently inherited about $350,000. I'm at a place in life that I don't really need much, and I'm on track for retirement. So I want to pass a majority of this money down to my kids. They're at different points in life, though, and I don't know whether to split it equally or not. One has debts to pay off while the other has a wife and kids and is preparing for retirement. What are your thoughts on how I should divvy up this money? Well, don't put us in the middle there, Alan. This is a highly, highly personal question. When you stop and think about it, there is a lot to this question. The first thing that I would want to know in this, I think, Teresa, is what form is this money in? Because if it is after-tax money, meaning that taxes have already been paid on the money, it's not IRA money, then you've got a lot of different options as opposed to it being inside an IRA. $350,000 is a lot of money, and as we know, the Secure Act really did play havoc with how the qualified money is passed on to non-spouse beneficiaries.
Yes, and what he's talking about here is if those funds are in an IRA, then it's going to only give you 10 years to distribute them. So you can imagine adding that money to your already taxed income and what that might do to your tax bracket. So in that situation, it may make more sense to disclaim that portion of the inheritance to someone else as opposed to distributing it to yourself, paying those taxes, and then gifting it. But just like we talked about before, forward-thinking tax planning. If you have inherited an IRA, it is even more critical that you have a CPA and a financial advisor working together to help you with getting that distributed appropriately so that you don't get penalized and so that you can minimize your taxes in the process.
Wouldn't you agree that this is a really very personal decision about how to split this money up? I think that's the real question. The heart of the question here is, well, how do I split it up? Do I give it to the person that has the debt and has the biggest need, or do I give it to the person that's preparing for retirement? I think that there's legitimacy on both sides, which could actually lend itself to a 50-50 decision.
Yes, and I also think, you mentioned the one that has some debt. It may be time to protect them by putting those in trust. I can't guarantee that that's right for you, but I know there are ways to protect assets from a divorce or from creditors while still gifting them to someone to allow them to use it how they need, but also protect it in their lifetime.
Well, and if you have one of those people who is in debt, are they a spendthrift? Is was the debt because they just aren't good with money, and you need to control how that money is apportioned out to them?
Yes.
That's something that a trust could do as well, and that's something that we can help guide you through in that process here at GenWealth. Teresa, I also want to kind of go back to a little bit of a caution that Alan kind of voiced here. He said that I'm at a point where I really don't need much, and I'm on track for retirement. That caused me to pause when I read this question and go, yes, you feel like you're okay right now, but what about what you don't see that might be coming down the pike?
Even in the process of dealing with the estate, there are a lot of things that can pop up on you that you weren't planning for. I saw it with my parents when I had to probate their estate, and I've seen it with clients where they think everything's taken care of and then something comes out of left field and just wallops them. Grief is weird like that, and the business of death is a lot. So there's a lot to think about there. I always encourage people, hurry up and wait. Do the things you have to do first, the things that legally you have to take care of, and then pause before you make any decisions so you can grieve and get past any chaos that might be coming down the pipeline and be ready to make that decision with a clear mind.
You heard the bell just a second ago, and as Teresa was wrapping up her comments, and it's time for our final thoughts. Teresa, I'll start with you.
I've probably said this a million times, but I'm just going to stick to the same thing. Your advice that you're receiving has to be unique to your situation. We've had some great questions today, and we've given you some ideas, but the best way to get advice that is tailored to you is to meet with a financial advisor that has the right training and experience to help you through whatever questions you're dealing with. And if you're not 100% sure that you're ready to go, why not be? Why not get with an advisor and plan for what you need going forward?
Teresa, I would say that here at GenWealth, we have essentially three categories of folks that we can help. Folks that are just getting started. We have a great program that really does cover the basics of personal finance. We have people who are building their wealth and have the opportunity to grow their wealth. There are some things that you need to understand and do, some habits you need to build so that you will be on track for financial independence. And then we have our ready to retire folks, people who have built up a nice nest egg. They need to be sure that that nest egg allows them to have regular, predictable, dependable income from now all the way through their retirement that is able to be adjusted as prices increase and inflation takes its toll. So any of those categories, we are here to serve you here at GenWealth Financial Advisors. We've got 6 offices across the state of Arkansas and in northern Louisiana. Advisors ready to help you at any particular time that you would like to come see us here at GenWealth Financial Advisors. And that's going to do it for the Get Ready for the Future show for this Thanksgiving holiday weekend. We hope you are enjoying your time together with family. We hope you are getting ready for the holidays. We hope you spend way less money, and we hope that you do have in mind your financial independence. We'll see you next time.
The GenWealth Financial Team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.